All right, we're live. I got my chai. I got my other coach here. How's it going, Naheed?
Pretty good. Happy almost end of January. Can you believe that?
Yeah, this month flew by compared to the last few months of last year. It felt like that was like we lived 5 years in the last 2 months of last year. Now this January's already done. Wow, that's just. I feel like there's not a lot happening these days, comparatively.
Well, that's probably a good thing. We had a capital insurrection. We've had national elections that have been disputed. So maybe a little bit of down time is not a bad thing.
I'm not complaining at all by any means. I'm just saying it just seems quieter these days. But um, despite quiet or not, today we have a pretty cool topic today. Actually, I think it's going to be very relevant to a lot of folks. Fear and how to deal with it, and how what effect it has on us, really. So, Naheed, tell us about let's hear just generally your approach with fear and how you deal with it and how you help your clients deal with it, and we can talk about mine because I think we probably have slightly different, if not completely different, approaches to this, but possibly similar.
Can I start with an example?
Absolutely, you can start with however you want.
Okay. So, one of my biggest fears was getting married. I know lots of people like the idea of getting married. I hated, hated the idea of getting married. I really strongly believe that marriage was the road to unhappiness, right? And so, guess what? This is 8 years ago. I'm in the position where I am in the process of getting married, and it was my responsibility to get the venue, to set it all up, to do all that kind of stuff. Partly because at that point I was unemployed, my husband was busy making money, so I had the time to do it. And interestingly enough, I was around trying out all these venues, talking to various people, and what ended up happening was everything blew up in my face. Every last venue that I thought was a good one turned out to be what the last venue that I spoke to, the person said, "Don't call me, don't write to me, don't have anything to do with me because pretty much I hate you." She left out that last part. She was trying to be a little bit professional, and I had to
But what
stop.
did you do? What did you do to cause that I'm very okay. I'm really curious now. What did you do to get that reaction? Because that's well, let's stick. Okay, let's pause on the fear thing for 1 second. I'm just really curious what you did to get that reaction, because that's a really strong reaction from a venue person who's supposed to be in sales, who's supposed to be like, I'm going to be friendly and make these people, get these people what they
Yeah,
need.
and it's actually a very reputable place. It's Morningstar Inn in Frederick. Lots of people get married over there. They're actually very well known. So I'm not picking some rinky dinky place off of Yelp or something like that. Well, I wanted to do things my way. I just asked them, and I thought I was being polite, but maybe I wasn't. I have no idea now. But I was asking them, well, hey, can we put up our own decorations? Can we do this? And can we do that? And I said, I think I insulted her when I said this room looks really plain. I like some parts of it, but the other parts look really plain. And I think I said it looked like a cafeteria to me. And that's
Oh wow, wow, well done, well done. So you were basically being like a bridezilla. Got it. Okay, we understand. All right.
No, no, no. I was just simply asking.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Anyway, so but that was venue number three, okay? And so
Yeah.
by venue number three, where I looked at a lot, but this was venue number three where it didn't work out and it didn't end well. And so at that point, I had to stop and say, okay, there's one common denominator in all of this, and that's me, right? And so I really had to stop and ask myself, what is going on over here? Because this is not my normal reaction, or at least it's not the reaction I normally get from other people when I'm meeting with them. And I had to stop and ask what was going on. And the truth was, I was terrified of getting married. I really was terrified. And we've talked about this before. And so I was sabotaging myself in every way possible, right? It got to the point where it had become so traumatic. I was not going to call off the marriage, but I was ready to call off all the celebrations, all the parties and those types of things. And I said, no, it's not right either. So I took a week off, and I really had to confront my fears. I really had to say, okay, what am I really afraid of? And why am I doing this if I'm so terrified? And once I was able to do that, once I was able to get to the root cause of feeling out of control, feeling like maybe if this marriage doesn't turn out the way I wanted it to, I would feel trapped in some way. After understanding that, then the strangest thing happened. I took a week off and then I decided, okay, I'm going to start all over again, my venue search all over again. And Drew, you'd be so proud of me. The very first place I picked, I took my husband to it. After I saw it, I loved it. I took my husband to it. He loved it. And that was it. And I was the perfect bride for them, by the way. There was no bridezilla, only the bride.
So you didn't get them getting married in a cafeteria.
I did not, and it was a beautiful place. And if you saw it, you probably would have agreed. It was kind of cafeteria like. I mean, the front parts were beautiful, but the rest of it was just like, eh.
I'm sure that was a reaction they're looking for. So that's awesome. No, that's great, and that's exactly what happens, though, right? We don't realize that there's a fear underlying our motivations, right? And sometimes we let that fear be much more powerful than our motivation.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, there's a couple big ones for me, but the two that stick out for me, one is a more simple one, which is this YouTube channel. Honestly, starting this YouTube channel was something that I was talking about in my head. I'm talking to myself about this. So I was thinking about this, toying with the idea of like doing a YouTube channel, and I'm like, I want to do this. I kind of want to do videos. I got to the point where I started filming videos, and then I was like, oh, I can't possibly post that. I can't. Oh, I don't. My eyes have bags or whatever. Or I look weird, or I didn't like the way I said that one thing. So I'm going to find reasons to not post this and not do this channel, and not start things and kick things off. And I would literally start finding reasons and creating reasons not to do this. I'm like, oh, I could do a video here. This is a really cool place, and like it's a really cool situation. I got this really good idea, and then I do the video, and then I'd be like, oh, well, this is off, or that sound over there, and I just make up these stupid excuses. And I realized I was just scared of looking bad. Right? I was scared of like putting something out that people didn't like. Like, what if people didn't like it? And I got to a point where I was like, wait, why do I? I mean, everything's out there. There's gonna be some people who just don't like it, period, right? And just not gonna like it, not gonna agree with it, or whatever. But that's okay. And so I just started. I just said, screw it. I'm just gonna try and just put stuff out there. And like honestly, what got me to the point of doing that was a couple of things. One was the realization that it doesn't really matter what people think. But the other one was actually Gary Vee and his concept of just put stuff out there, even if it's imperfect. Like it doesn't have to be perfect to put it out there. And I knew this again. Those things intellectually, but intellectually is only part of it. And it's not until you dig deeper into the meaning behind it and what actually matters, and how it resonates with you, that you realize, yeah, you know what, my fear, it's really fear that's stopped me from doing this. It's my own fear. It's me, right? It's a part of me that's stopping me from doing this. And so let me just go ahead and do it. So I just started doing it, and I did it and I didn't die. It was like, oh wait, I did it, and some people actually liked it. Okay, cool. Okay, nice. I'm still alive. I'm still healthy. That didn't hurt putting the video out there that obviously wasn't perfect. So I just kept doing it. But the other thing is, and this is something I'm still struggling with, honestly, for myself. But it's not so much for the same reasons. But losing weight was one big one for me, and being on that kind of journey to live a healthier lifestyle. I was struggling back and forth with losing weight for over a decade. And it's like, you're sitting there saying, I really want to lose weight. I want to be healthy. I want to live a healthier lifestyle. I want to be able to run and play sports and be active without breathing hard or looking like a geriatric patient. And so, you start doing things. Huh?
Darth Vader, as he's breathing hard.
Exactly, yeah. Except Darth Vader was actually relatively physically fit. So, but yes, I don't want to sound like Darth Vader after just like running for like 2 seconds. Thanks, Monty, for your comment. Thanks for tuning in. But yeah, I was like, I need to start eating healthier, being healthier, and I just couldn't do it. I would eat healthy for 3 meals, and then I'd eat unhealthy again. I'd be like, oh, I ate healthy for a day. I can spoil myself, and I'd eat like an entire pizza, or something stupid like that, right? But I realized it was fear. It was, and there was a fear of not enjoying my food. It was fear. Honestly, it was a fear of the deeper fear is the fear of becoming my brother, because my brother doesn't really eat for enjoyment. He eats for just purely for nutrition. Like he's some like car that's running off of fuel, and he works out and then he does a protein shake. That's pretty much it. That's just like his life is protein shakes and working out. And only recently has he gotten to the point where he actually eats real food and enjoys it. But that was my underlying fear. It doesn't make sense, right? Intellectually, I know I'm never going to become my brother,
Mhm.
right? But or a person like that who just doesn't enjoy their food. But that was a legitimate fear that I had. And a lot of times you find that these fears are not they're not like rational fears. They're just there in our heads, and they're completely feeling based, right? They're completely in our heads, and they're all about story we tell ourselves. Those are my two examples.
Yeah, the two things that really hit me, and I think is true for a lot of people, especially with your first example and my example, A is fear of failure,
Mm-hmm.
right? In some way, form, that's what the underlying issue tends to be. But the second thing is exactly what you said. None of it is based on logic, or it's based on made up logic. I think that's probably a better
Yes.
way of putting it. We tell ourselves this is what it is, and therefore we kind of build our lives around that logic. And until we are ready to confront it, and it takes courage, it takes tremendous courage, right? So until you're ready to confront it, your whole life kind of fits in that little box. Because I'll tell you, I bet you your brother did what he did because he had a bit of fear as well. Maybe not the same fear as you, obviously, but he probably had a fear that, hey, if I don't do it this way, then I too will be unhealthy. So I have to be super rigid and disciplined.
Yeah, that's a long con. We don't have time to delve into that level of detail of all of the fears that my brother has, because it's a longer list. But I'm just being an ass. No, but yes, I agree. I think a lot of times we do let fear drive us, right? And it can be a very powerful motivator. Don't get me wrong. A lot of amazing things have come out of fear. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a evolutionary response, right? It's built into our systems, right? With a fight or flight response, fight, flight, or freeze. That is an evolutionary thing to survive. We need fear, right? If you don't have the fear complex, you don't have that fear part of us, we would not have survived as a species for anywhere near as long as we have right now. You know what I mean? So there's an element of fear that's necessary, but there's a point where like anything, too much of anything is bad, right? And when you have fear that gets to the point where it's debilitating and it holds us back from achieving what we want to achieve, that's the problem, right? A little bit of fear is good, but too much fear is it will freeze you. I mean, it's fight, flight, or freeze. And unfortunately, when you get too much of it, you tend to freeze or fly, run away, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, to me, fear also has a common sense component.
Mm-hmm.
You need a certain level of healthy fear in order to be able to just survive even today. Actually remember a story. Somebody had told me she'd gone on a trip that was a safari trip, and everybody in the safari. So there was a couple of nights where they were actually camping out, right? So this is in the middle of the safari. So if you can imagine, all these wild animals are roaming around. It's basically their territory. And they were told very, very clearly that nobody gets out of their tent at night. If you needed to use the facilities, not that what was there, they needed to call and somebody would come and get them. Nobody was allowed to leave their tent. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the middle of the night, you hear somebody rustling and getting out of the tent. And one of the guides got out and he was furious. He's like, "What are you doing?" And the person's response is, "Well, I'm on this side of the road, and the animals are on that side of the road. And mind you, there's no barrier to the road. I mean, it's literally just a road."
Right, right.
And he was flabbergasted. He's like, "What are you talking about?" I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds silly, but there needs to be a healthy sense of fear as well.
Oh, I agree with you. No, that's I mean, because naturally animals don't cross roads. You know that. Don't you know that. I mean, no one's ever hit a deer on a street. They're obviously driving through the forest when that happens. Um, no, there's an element of common sense. I completely agree. I mean, unfortunately, in today's world, I feel like common sense is not no longer common, but that's a different conversation for another day. But yes, no, I mean, like you said, a healthy amount of fear is necessary to survive. Because if we don't have that fear, there's nothing to stop us from doing dumb shit. I mean, as a society, I mean, you see all these fail videos, right? They're only funny because the person survived, right? Because and they very easily could have not survived some of those things. You know, like I saw one the other day where this girl was like kind of skateboard down an icy hill just because it would have been funny, and it was funny until she flipped over, and she did survive, but it could have been very easy for her to just snap her neck and just not survive, and then that would not have been a fail video; it would have been a death video, and it'd been not funny at all. You know, like it's just like it's the thin line between funny and tragic, right? And they have these. I don't know if you've seen these online. I spend way too much time online, but I see these like these ads or things for like, oh, amazing, crazy photos taken right before death, and 9 out of 10 of them were people doing dumb shit before they died, like taking amazing selfies on the side of a cliff, and then he fell.
Yeah, it's
Like
amazing
not
to me
funny.
how many of those there are. Selfies with grizzly bears.
Yeah,
Anyway, I think we're going a little bit off topic here.
we are. We are. Apologize, but yes, no. But back to the fear topic. How do you help your clients who deal with or yourself when you're dealing with fear like that? So we've talked about kind of the how it looks, how it manifests. Right now, let's talk
Yes.
about how we help our folks deal with it.
Okay. So here's an interesting thing. People always come to me because they say they have fear of failure, but as we as coaches know, that it's really fear of success. The fear of failure is the top level. Fear of success is really what they're feeling, but don't know how to articulate it that way. So the first thing I do is start delving into what does failure look like in the past. What happened that made you feel like you're failing in some particular way? And I use a very specific process. And through that process, what tends to happen is that there's a perspective shift. So either the person doesn't, at the end of the process, feel like they truly have failed, or if they still continue to feel that it wasn't the best result, they get tremendous value from that experience. And now all of a sudden, it becomes one less way that they're going to come in and possibly fail because they've learned this. And usually, after this process, there's the motivation to get back on and do it again because now they're like, yeah, I learned something valuable and now I want to do it again, type of thing. But at the end of the day, what we really want to look at is what does fear of success look like? Because is there fear that once I become very famous, I'm going to be this? In fact, that was one of my clients. She saw this very famous person in her industry who turned out to be an asshole, and she was afraid that that's who she was going to turn into. So we had to kind of work through all of those things. But yeah, to me, it all gets down to those emotions and those old belief systems, the stories, as you said, we tell ourselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's a great one. I mean, fear of success is absolutely a real thing. For me, a lot of my clients some do deal with fear of success. Many of them also deal with just fear of being wrong, though, right?
Yeah.
So like, for some folks deal with fear of success. Some people deal with fear of being wrong, and what I mean by that is you're going off on this. For example, let's take entrepreneurship, for example, as a great one, right? You have now left your job. You've gone against the advice of your friends and your family because they don't understand entrepreneurship as well as you do. Honestly, a lot of people don't, and so you go off on this journey, and you're like, I gotta win. I gotta do this. I gotta prove them wrong. It doesn't, and at some point, it stops being about doing the thing, and starts being about proving yourself right. And then you start, all these fears start coming up, like, well, if I do this and I don't succeed, then I'll be wrong. I don't want to be wrong, and I don't want to face them being wrong now because I've taken this risk, and this risk they advise me against, and if they're right, then that means I'm wrong, and you start getting you start getting worked up and worried about being wrong, and ultimately, look, the only way we can ever really grow is by making mistakes, right? If you went your whole life and everything you did worked out for you, you would never learn anything. You just think that you are. Think about, if nerd reference, shocker. Think about Star Wars, the last trilogy. For those people who watched it, I'm sure everyone watched it, but the main character Rey never really goes through any real adversity, and that's the biggest complaint of all the people watching, right? It's like she never really faces any real challenges. Everything is just, it's a challenge, and then wait, it's not. She overcame it. It's not really a challenge. Okay. This could be a really good challenge. Oh wait, no, she just ran right through that. Cool. Okay, so who's the real situation? Where's the real situation in there? Right? Where's the real challenge? What did she actually learn from episode 7 to 9? In real life, it's similar in the sense that you're not going to grow unless you really face some kind of challenge, unless you are really pushing yourself past your comfort zone in some way, right? If you live your entire life in this little circle, you're going to become really good at that little circle. But
Mhm.
all this out here is going to be completely foreign to you, and you're not going to really have any growth in your entire life. And that's where people kind of falter and like, okay, well, I'm afraid of taking that risk, but at the same time, at the other, what's on the other side of that fear, right? And that's what I always ask people to think about. What's on the other side of fear? And it's a weird question for a lot of folks because they don't ever think about that. And I'm reminded it over and over again of the Stoic philosophy of the obstacle is the way, right? And fear is the obstacle. Fear is the big obstacle, the one that we all face a lot of times. And what's on the other side of that obstacle is what you want, right? If you run from that, you're never going to really get to the where you want to go, or you can't really control. If you're going, I say people can get motivated by what they want or what they fear. You're either running towards what you want or away from what you fear. And if you're running away from what you fear, how many times have you seen in movies where people are like, oh my God, I'm scared, and they run right into a door right behind them or some wall or something, right, and knock themselves out? Because you don't control where you're going when you're running away from something. You just run away. You think about that after, right? Wherever you're running has got to be somewhere better than what thing you fear, right? So yeah, exactly, Michelle. Thanks for
Yeah,
tuning in, by the way.
yeah, we always love people to put in their comments. And I wanted to just address something that you just said, which was what's on the other side of fear? So I
Mhm.
told you how terrified I was of getting married. Turns out, and I tell my husband this all the time, of all the decisions I've ever made, that has turned out to be my best decision. When I think about the place of my greatest joy, greatest happiness, greatest sense of feeling comfortable and content, it's my life with him. And that is something that I would have completely denied myself if all I was focused on is on the fear. And you're absolutely right about starting a business. I think everybody who starts a business comes in with a tremendous amount of fear. And it's a question of now what are you going to do with it? How are you going to handle it? But I have this interesting thought because I think a lot about how we raise our children. I don't have any, but how do we raise our children? What are the messages that they're learning? And I feel like when I was growing up, there was this understanding that between my young years and a certain age, I don't know, 25, 30, it doesn't matter what it is, that's my growing period. I never thought of my parents as growing and
Mhm.
developing, right? You don't think of it that way. So that's kind of how I saw it. I was like, okay, now I'm an adult, which means all my growing is over, which means
Yeah.
everything should be coming to me just easily because it seemed that way from looking outside at other people. And it took a lot of growing in within myself to really understand that this is life. This is my parents dealt with it. My grandparents, when they were in the 60s, 70s, 80s, had to deal with it. Nobody stops in the growing process. You either do it kicking and screaming, which is never any fun, or you do it a little bit more willingly and with a little more trust that you're going to be able to get up, you're going to be able to dust yourself off, and you're going to keep continuing because, as you said, you're not dead, which means you've survived.
Right.
And isn't that the purpose?
Yeah. No, I love that because I think as kids we all have that perspective, right? It's like, oh, once I hit 21, I've achieved, I've arrived, right? That's
Yeah.
it. Now you're as big, you're as tall as you're gonna get, you're as intelligent as you're gonna get, you've grown into your full level, and then that's it. Like you can't, you're not gonna get anything better than that. So you think our parents are like maxed out, in terms
Hmm.
of character development. And it's not the case at all. I mean, like I look at my parents, and they're older than most of my friends, but they're still growing and learning at that time. But I never thought about that as a kid. I thought, oh, they know what they're doing. They're just this is where you're supposed to be, and you don't think that they're still growing and learning, and they're still figuring shit out, right? They're still figuring out a lot of stuff. I mean, any parent is still figuring stuff out for themselves. They're not like, and I didn't realize that myself until I was honestly until I adopted my dog on my own. Like with my ex, it was a little bit kind of like we could share responsibility, so that if I dropped the ball, I could, hey, get home and walk Yuki. But with Hachi, it's like it was scary. I'm like, well, shit. Now this life is depending on me, right? And I'm like, wow, this must be what parents feel like. Like, it's like you try to figure out what to do. How do I best take care of this little guy? And still, by the way, take care of myself as well and run a business and figure out what I'm doing. Um, it's it's incredibly terrifying, right? That something else, another life is depending on you, And exactly, yeah, Michelle's still figuring shit out. Like she's got a couple of kids with my cousin, and it's like, yeah, you're always figuring things out. Like you're always figuring things out. It doesn't matter how
Yeah,
many kids you have. Every kid's different. I think every person, right? Even if
exactly.
you
And
have
that's what
10
it
kids,
is.
you're figuring things
Everybody's
out.
different.
But I can't imagine life as my grandmother or grandparents. They had like 11 or 13 kids back then, and I'm like, holy shit, that's crazy. But different conversation again. Um, but no, like it's like fear is always going to be there, right? But like you said, it's a healthy. There's a healthy element of fear where you use it to grow and to motivate you and keep you going and to understand. Okay, there are risks associated with it. It's more awareness, right? Less than more awareness than fear, a risk assessment type thing. Whereas fear is where you take that risk assessment and take it a little bit too far, where it starts controlling you, starts changing your behavior in a negative way or in a not helpful way, I should say.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this. I feel like I've mentioned this before, but when I was young, I had a really bad fear of water. And my parents wanted me to learn how to swim. And thanks to my mother's sheer tenacity, I'm now able to get from one end of the swimming pool to the other. But for somebody who didn't want water splashed in her face, who didn't want her head under the water, that makes swimming a little bit tough. And I remember it was like visceral. I was terrified of swimming, but I would watch all these other kids who had such a wonderful time. I could see them jumping in and out, jumping with something I just wouldn't do. It just wouldn't happen. And so they were going down the slide, jumping off of the diving board, and there were many times I got really close to at least coming down the slide. But the problem was it was in the deep end of the water, not the shallow end. So I never ended up doing it. And even as a young kid, I realized that look at how much fun I could possibly have if I only tried it one time, right? Because it really only takes one time to be able to say, okay, I didn't die. I can do this. And
Yeah,
I
and
never did.
I mean, the pool example is irrelevant to me because my parents, well, my mom was, and I think any Indian parent or Guyanese Indian parent especially can relate to this, but there was like, don't go near water. You have a circle on your back or some superstitious nonsense. And it's like, you should not go near water because you will die
Oh,
automatically. Just
wow.
by being near water, you will die. Like
Okay.
just existing in a span of 3 or 4 feet from water, you will die. That
Yeah.
was
And
it was
Guyana's on the coast, isn't it?
let's not even talk about the logic behind this because
Okay,
there
go on, go on.
but I think with superstitious parents or something like that, like I mean, even that's, whether they're superstitious or not, like your parents tend to have these fears, and my mom had a lot of fears about me. I had asthma as a kid, so my parents thought anytime I was going to go play sports for anything more than 3 to 5 minutes, I would die automatically. Again, no warning, no shortness of breath, just death, immediate. I think a lot of parents get that kind of fear, which I didn't understand again until
Mhm.
much later in life. But at the same time, it's like you said, you're seeing all these kids having all this fun, and you're like, as a kid, you want to be able to experience that. You want to be able to have that kind of fun too. And as a kid, I think we're blessed and cursed at the same time, right? We're blessed with this curiosity on like of seeing the world and wanting to experience the world in a very very pure way, right? We don't know enough to be
Mhm.
aware of risks, and I'm intentionally not using the word fear yet because I think fear again is that difference between risk assessment and letting it affect you in a not helpful way. And you don't know enough to be afraid. You're afraid of the dark because you don't know what's on the other side of the dark. You can't see the dark, right? But our parents know enough of the world that they're afraid for us,
Mhm.
and so but that gets to the point where it's a little bit too much, right? And exactly, yes. So exactly, it's that balance, right? It's trying to work that balance of trying to help your kids to experience the world in a healthy way while also protecting them at the same time, right? And if you think about it, though, it's ourselves. We do that with ourselves as adults, right? And that's where I come in. I talk about the shadow a lot of times, right? Our shadow self is like our immature self trying to protect us with not knowing how to protect us, right?
Mhm.
So it's like it's taking what we know and mostly what we don't know into account and saying, oh, that you might fail. Like for example, the entrepreneurship thing. Like you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen there. You're afraid of being wrong as an immature level, and so that's what's holding you back. It's your shadow telling you like, hey, you can't be wrong here. You got to do this. You got to be careful. Be careful. Be careful. Whereas the higher party, the intellectual party, who says, look, I'm organized. I have a great idea. I know I'm validated. And I know it's going to work really well, and I'm going to go ahead and do this, right? And so it's like it's trying to balance that though, in terms of maintaining a healthy level of risk awareness while at the same time staying motivated and moving yourself forward.
Yeah, something that as you were talking about that we don't maybe do often enough is to stop and ask ourselves, what are all the things that we've been afraid of? And we just kind of put it to the side and say, okay, yeah, that's just not me. I know for a lot of people growing up, there was a lot of fear around math, for example. For me, I told you about my fear of water. And that happened at a very young age. In my entire life, I've avoided beaches. I've avoided anything to do with water and having fun and anything like that around it. And while I'm not saying my entire life is lacking as a result of it, but there's so much more enjoyment I could have gotten with friends and family who do love going to the beaches. So it'd be interesting to stop and kind of take and sort of a look, a review. What have you told yourself that, oh, I don't need this for X, Y, and Z reasons, which are mostly these non logic based logical things that we tell ourselves? So, how much are you holding yourself back as a result of these things that you're like, yeah, no, this is just not for me, I don't like it, and you come up with your 10 different reasons, but really it's fear that's holding you back?
Rationalizing, basically, right? You're just
Yeah,
rationalizing what you're doing because it's like, oh, well, see, that didn't work out anyway. So that was a good thing I didn't try that. Like, God
exactly.
forbid I tried that and that didn't work out. Where in reality, we know the butterfly effect and energy and all this kind of stuff. Like, if you had tried it, things might have been a little bit different, right?
Your whole
Uh,
life could have been different.
oh yeah, absolutely. Everything could be completely different. But yeah, I know. I think this is an awesome discussion, and we're already actually at 31 minutes. I didn't realize we've gotten there already, but we do want to wrap up sooner than later. I think because I don't want folks to be on here for too long and get bored. But if you folks have questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and we can, we're happy to talk about them more deeply. And if this is a fun topic, seems like a pretty popular one, we can talk about this again more in depth later. Maybe do some specific examples and walk through them. But I think the important thing to realize is that fear is a part of us, right? It's a natural evolutionary piece of humanity and who we are, and it does keep us alive at some level, right? I mean, a healthy amount of fear is good, but it's like anything else. It's like there there are reasons that it exists, and there's ways that we need to actually manage it, right? And manage it in sense of reminding yourself what's motivating you, what is pushing you forward, right? Go after what you want. Don't run away from what you're afraid of. Always
Yeah.
always ask yourself what's motivating me right now in this moment. Is it fear or is it desire? Right? Is it fear of what could happen or what, the future or whatever? Or is it going after what I really, really want? And if it's going after what you want, keep pushing forward. If it's just being afraid of what's ahead of you, question why that is and what the actual meaning behind that is. And then see if it's stronger than your motivation to achieve what you want. And then if that works out for you, then keep pushing forward. Remember, what's on the other side of fear is what you want 99% of the time.
Exactly. And what we don't realize is that individual fears here and there might not be making a huge impact, but when you collectively put them all together, you're boxing yourself up, and that box is becoming smaller and smaller. So many people talk about freedom. This is the opposite of freedom. And it's not because of the environment, the economy, the president. It's us. It's within ourselves. These are things that we can control, but we bring these boxes closer and closer. And
The external reasons are, like you said, rationalizations, right? They're all rationalizations, honestly, because we ultimately control how we react to everything. And we can react with fear or we can react with moving forward and pushing ourselves to do what we need to do. So,
yeah, and it would be so nice if anybody who's listening to this want to even contribute at a later time if necessary. And how do you get over fear? How do you deal with fear? Everybody has their own different ways of doing it. You have your process, I have mine, but each person has a slightly different way of dealing with it. And it's always interesting for me to hear what those processes are.
and the other thing I would ask is, if you're comfortable with it, feel free to post in the chat what you're afraid of, right? I mean, and share it, because sometimes things that we're afraid of, other people share that as well, and we don't realize that it's a community, it's a world's community, right? Like we have what I'm afraid of. I'm guaranteeing like at least another, well, in the world, probably a million other people are probably afraid, at least are afraid of the same things I'm afraid of, right? So by sharing the fear, understanding that other people are afraid of it too, is a way of humanizing it and making it not you don't feel as alone. You don't feel as boxed in. You start feeling, oh, well, we're all we all have these similar fears. We're all human. We have a similar experience, and learning how people got over it too. Some people will have found ways to get over their fear, right? And you can learn from that.
As you were talking about that, it just reminded me of a dream I had, I don't know, months, years, whatever, some time ago. Okay. And so I dreamt that I was in this staircase and I was running down the staircase and there was this thing behind me. I didn't really know what the thing was because I was too afraid to look back. And so I started running faster. And the faster I was running, the faster that thing moved. It never caught up, but the faster it moved. And then it was almost like a Matrix scene where I'm like zooming down the staircase, flying through. And see, I had a movie reference. I hope you're proud of that.
Just gonna say that was I was gonna say wait till you finish, and then like that was well done. You actually made an actual reference.
So
Sorry,
as I was doing my Matrix thing, whatever the thing behind me was doing the Matrix thing as well. And the most interesting thing is in the dream, there was a message that says, just turn around and look at it. Just turn around and look at it. And I woke up, never did that. But so when you said post your fear, just facing it, just acknowledging it and making it, putting it up there sometimes is what you need to have that little shift to start that change process. Because most of the time, we're just too afraid to face the fear.
yeah, and just facing it, turning it from unknown to known sometimes is enough to
Yeah,
just.
exactly.
And Michelle,
Because you
thanks for
look at it, and yeah, you look at it and you're like, this is dumb.
yeah. But thanks for the comment, Michelle. That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. And helping to know that you're not alone is a really powerful thing. That's why support groups work. Like I mean, I'm not saying you guys need to join a support group, but I'm saying like support groups work for a reason because everyone in that group shares some level of shared experience or shared fear or concept of the world, and helping everyone to get through that is really can be really powerful. So if you guys feel comfortable, please feel free to share in the comments after the fact. This will be posted on YouTube, obviously, so feel free to jump on there and check it out. If you guys liked the video, hit the like button. Feel free to comment. Hit subscribe if you're curious about learning more new videos we come out with. We do this every 2 weeks, so we will be back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, which the date is going to be coming up in a second. 10th. No, 11th. Sorry, 11th. February 11th. So for those of you who are curious, love to see you guys back again. If you guys have ideas for future topics, I think we're going to delve into this again at some point because this seems like a popular topic. And it's a really important one, honestly. But yeah, we'll feel free to let us know things you want to talk about or questions you have. We can probably talk for half an hour on just one question sometimes. So yeah, thanks you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. Naheed, do you want to say anything before we end?
I want to say thanks to Michelle because she also put herself out there talking about some of the things that she's dealing with her kids. It sounds like she has kids as well, kids of her own. So appreciate the comments, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. And thanks, Michelle.